Hello, it's Wednesday and it's time for another Blueprint Blether, and this one we've got a bit of a different spin. So again, James Wade here and
Scott Riddell, Game Development Manager, Carolina Midlands.
Excellent, regional shout out there. And we're actually really happy to have with us our, I would say, new colleague. We've actually been around quite a while, Craig McCann. So I'll let Craig introduce himself and then we'll interrogate you over there.
Thanks, James. Morning, boys. Good to be here. Craig McCann, Senior Match Official Development Manager. It certainly is. It doesn't even have a neat acronym. So yeah, that's my role here at Scottish Rugby.
Excellent. So you've been part of the team now for just over a year. And essentially you kind of look after all things match officiating. How did you get into match officiating? What's kind of been your journey that's led you to this point before we crack into like some tips and things about refereeing?
Yeah, absolutely. Very much a one-club man.
Yep.
Played a huge number of games for Annan.
Over 200 caps, I believe?
300.
300 caps?
Yeah, over 300 times. Yeah.
You need to get out more.
I know. I
didn't
leave my goldfish bowl. Played for Annan all my days.
What position?
Standoff.
Nice.
Played some representative stuff, under 16s at scrum half, but mainly standoff.
Cool.
Played a little bit for Edinburgh Uni when I was there, freshers, midweek stuff, but as a club, I even travelled back at the weekends to play for Annan. So came right up through their mini system, into the Colts with a pretty successful school team. It was well run. It was actually run by my dad.
There's a few caps.
That's it, exactly. So played for Annan Academy and we did pretty well. I think we punched above our weight. We did really well regionally as well as nationally. But club man, really, passionate about club rugby. Love everything about Annan Rugby Club. Still support them just now. Pushed on through that, played, and it got to 2019, and I just think that my time playing had come to an end. And two options really. I wanted to stay in the game. Did I want to go into coaching? Did I want to go into refereeing? Now there was some people that were very influential in my decision. Some referees that I know pretty well, who had badgered me for years to take up the whistle rather than go into coaching. And being a PE teacher at the time, I thought I didn't really want to come straight out of playing and going into more coaching. It's quite commitment heavy, and I think it's a big selling point for match officiating is that you can train in your own time. You can train with people, you can train on your own, it's up to you. If you have an event on a Saturday, we have an online calendar, so the beauty of it is that you feel less guilty for putting a red cross in that box. And you can have a little bit more flexibility in your time, whereas with coaching, potentially you have to be committed Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday it might be. Exactly. So, coaching is very much for some people, but I think what I want to do is I want to sort of celebrate the viable option that match officiating is for people who are finishing playing.
Definitely.
Obviously
I was going to say you're a qualified teacher as well. How would that sort of transfer into refereeing as well? What skills and attributes?
Yeah, definitely, Scott. I think personal qualities is a big thing for match officials. You are out there on your own, so you have to have an element of self-awareness, confidence, sort of literary skills as well. You need to be able to communicate. You need to be confident enough to walk into a clubhouse environment and initiate conversation with club committees, players, coaches, supporters. If you carry yourself in a very positive way, then you can have these very constructive conversations, and that's, I think, where we need to get as many clubs to be is welcoming match officials. They are visitors to our clubs, especially those that are society officials or national panel officials. They're arriving as a guest to your club, and if we can really work hard on creating a positive environment, then more people will see officiating as a viable option when they finish playing.
Definitely. And we talk about the blueprint is all about change our game, about creating amazing environments, and referees are an absolute integral part of that. Match officials are an integral part of that. So without match officials, there is no game. All this training, all the kind of wee games, big games, clan battles that we're looking to do in training, there will be no output. So we're going to delve into kind of like how do we create amazing atmospheres for match officials. We're going to talk about how actually coaching and match officiating in the blueprint are very much interlinked. But before we do that, Craig's obviously come on board. What's your role for Scottish Rugby? What do you do? Tell people what they can get in touch with you about.
Yeah, so my role, my main role is to sort of bring the match official strategy to life. I have within Scottish Rugby, I have the sole responsibility of ensuring that the strategy is implemented. I have a team of two. Many of you will know Colin Brett and Colin George, Corgi. That's the makeup of my team. So we have the strategic element, bringing that to life. We also have the sort of operational stuff where we, as a group, we manage the national panel of referees. So that's referees who officiate in the men's premiership, women's premiership, National 1, 2 and 3 at the moment, and the top national youth and schools conferences. My department then liaises with the 6 referee societies who look after the community game, and we work with them in terms of partnership agreements, we work with them in terms of recruitment, to ensure that our whole community game is serviced with enough match officials. Beyond that, we run courses. So we have our mini rugby referee course, which we're maybe looking to rebrand potentially. We have our introduction to match officiating course, which is for those referees who want to go into the contact game. And we have our aspiring match official course, which we have opened up to everybody now. So regardless of your experience in match officiating, if you've done your introduction to match officiating course and you want to delve a little bit deeper into what it takes to be a match official at a slightly higher level, then you are more than welcome to come on to our aspiring courses. I know, James, that you've been on the aspiring course.
I have indeed. I haven't quite
that
picked up the whistle yet. But we were actually saying there were quite a few coaches, weren't there, who maybe hadn't done refereeing before, but I found it really useful in terms of looking at the game in a different lens, but also to help me in my coaching in terms of because we've just literally done a blether on how to coach games and why we coach with games. And
I think it's like the coach's eye ultimately. If you're coaching within the laws, or if there's directives or focuses that the referee is really looking out for, then it's certainly like being aware of those and understanding why. So that's for me like the context of why is huge, from a coach understanding, from player understanding, spectators, match officials themselves, club networks. But I think the more coaches we can get to through our introduction to match officiating course would be positive, and then the support through that is huge as well. But
I think just jump in there, Scotty. I think the introduction to match officiating course scratches the surface, and it really covers the basics. But if you're coaching and you want a deeper understanding of how and why decision making takes place, because our game is complex, and there are so many decisions that could be made at every single opportunity, or every single breakdown, every single set piece, and it's about if more people have an understanding of the amount of information that is coming out of that towards a referee, and the referee having to make a decision, then we might be in a really good place. And I've said this on a local podcast before, is that the reason that we get so much disagreement and why we sit in potentially the pub or we sit and have a coffee and we have debate about decisions is because there's so much grey area in our game. And that's the beauty of our game. And we don't want to take that out, but it's about how we harness that debate so that it doesn't become toxic within our game. And referees will always welcome healthy debate after a game about why they made that decision, and they will probably be able to give you a pretty good decision. And you may disagree with them by the end of that conversation, but at least you'll understand why they've made that decision. And I think that can be really powerful.
Yeah, the other thing that really interests me with the match officiating support mechanisms that is provided would be like the referee coaching network. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So I'll start as a new referee. So if you want to progress from being a club referee into a society referee, in all of our societies there is an extensive coaching network. So I'll talk from personal experience. When I first went into the West setup, went to the West Society, I would be coached in inverted commas on a regular basis. So especially if you are an inexperienced ref, you will if you go into the academy setup, which the West have, they will guarantee you to have support when you go out and referee. So many people think that the referees are being assessed. That's still often a question I get. Oh, I saw the ref was being assessed. Not in our community, not in the lower levels of our community game. It's very much a coach. So there's no assessment being made. It's that coach is there supporting you from the minute you arrive at the ground through your performance, and then they'll give you a feedback session afterwards. Now that'll happen, 4, 5, 6 times a season. As you progress through the society, you'll then be nominated up onto the national panel. You'll go through the transition panel, and then if you're successful in there, you'll move on to the national panel. When you're on the national panel, you have your own coach. So that coach in there will have a stable of 4, maybe 3 or 4, potentially 5 referees, usually 4.
National panel, where would they referee at? What levels would they referee at?
So national panels, Premiership, men and women.
Yep.
Nat 1, 2 and 3 as it stands at the
and then
moment.
Everything below is society.
That's right, yeah. Top national youth and schools we have as well in the national panel. Yeah. So you'll have your own coach. So you become part of a stable, and we have recently invested in Coach Logic, which is fantastic, and we can interact with our coach on there. So our coach we can tag games, we can talk about our performance, we can look at decisions as to why we've made those decisions, all that side of things. So we have that dedicated support, right through the season. So that's an incredible support network in there, and I know that other areas of the game are quite envious of that.
Yeah, I think certainly from a coaching perspective,
Definitely.
Looking at how many coaches are putting themselves out there to either film themselves coaching and then have the means to analyse it, and that would be something that would probably be available in our advanced coaching programme, where you could go and tag interventions or tag questioning or tag feedback. But the really interesting thing with going digital and using video for the refereeing would be tagging decision making, and then having a discussion on that, and then looking to was it correct by letter of the law, what were the various inputs. So I think as a reflection and learning tool, that is like unbelievable. I think it's really, really good. I
think also everything you described there is very much kind of the ethos of the blueprint. We talk about, I think in the first blog we talked about the learn environment. And actually it's something just you were saying there, like referees are essentially like players, they're performers. So would we potentially, and just think about some of the environments that maybe we operate in, like would you shout at a player like that for trying stuff? Because they're being coached, they're learning, they're moving their way through the game, whether it's through age grades or in the adult game, you might go from that 3 up to like, I'm going to try myself at Prem. It's exactly the same for referee, innit? So they're actually performers, they're being coached and they're learning their craft. And they're doing so in a way that's actually very, really reflective of the blueprint principles around learn, changing the game, challenge, creativity, wee games, big games, refereeing in sevens.
Yeah,
I think the environment that we create at our clubs, from the youngest rugby players right the way through to our senior teams, the environment that we create in there is so important, and that includes that person who has volunteered to be in the middle. And the message I would really be keen to get out there is that if there is room for growth in the players, there is very much likely be room for growth in the person who's in the middle.
Definitely.
So the level of experience of player is probably correlates with the level of experience of the referee to a certain extent, and we have to understand that that when we arrive at a youth festival, the referees are not going to be Mikey Adamson, Holly Davidson, Wayne Barnes. They're not going to be world-class referees. They're going to be people there who are learning the game, who are looking to progress their refereeing career. And I would love to think that in all of these environments, they would be supported equally as the players.
Absolutely. And I think it's a great way to segue on to kind of, all things refereeing, and it's there's amazing opportunities, I think, from that. So we'll obviously put some stuff out after the Blether and how you can get involved in match officiating and refereeing. And Ian, as a coach, like we're saying about, as coaches, the blueprint is all about learning and growing and looking at the game in different ways and beating the game in inverted commas. You can only do that if you know what the game is, and actually working with referees to look at decision making around. I learned so much about refereeing the maul and the scrum. Obviously, I was an outside back when I played, and my biases are very much towards that end of the pitch. So actually, it was Dave McCurville gave a great practical on like the referee's process at scrum time. and genuinely found it not only interesting in terms of what I'm looking at, but actually what I can then work with players if the scrum coach is in there. I can actually give some meaningful stuff about not getting too long and body angles and things like that.
Yeah, that preventative language.
100%, yeah. So I think it's, and we're going to talk about now actually like what tips from the referee world would you bring into coaches that when they're working in training sessions to make sure that, as we say, coaching through games is a massive part of the blueprint. And if it's all about preparing players tactically for the big game and the game we play on a Saturday, then actually what is the role of the coach in that, and to replicate potentially the referees. So let's talk fast flowing rugby. Rugby speed's a big thing. What sort of things would you say that referees can try to do, or coaches can try to do, to make sure that a game flows? We talk loads about rugby speed being a massive part of the blueprint. Person in the middle is obviously quite integral to that. So we have bits and pieces in some of our competitions, but just want to share with us what sort of things that you try or you've seen other referees try to kind of make sure that game is flowing and snappy.
I think the referee's body language and the referee's communication can have a significant impact on that environment. And as a coach, if you are, if you're encouraging the whole time, JP Doyle, our high performance coach, talks about refereeing the game in front of you. Yeah. Now, that doesn't matter whether you're in the middle in Murrayfield in front of 60,000 people, you still referee the game in front of you. And equally, if you're doing an under 14 game at the weekend, you're there to facilitate the game. Like, as a coach or as a coach refereeing, encouragement, praise, consider your decision-making process. Do you have to blow your whistle every single time there's a fault in that game? Because you don't have a game if you do that. So there is an understanding, and if you have the support of your environment, you can be a little bit creative as a coach refereeing that game. The more vocal you are, the more confident you look in the middle, then everybody else on the sideline is going to be confident in you that you have absolute control of what you're doing. Now, I understand that when there is a result, at the end of the game, that can be slightly different. But if in terms of coaching sessions, there's no pressure on you, so you can be as creative as you like. You can, we've talked about scoring systems. I'm sure you've talked about that already. You can be doing certain things like that, which will encourage different player behaviours. But as a coach of a youth side, is your communication, positivity, encouragement, and an understanding of your players about what you're trying to achieve in what you're doing. So if you can get that message across, so you're not just in there blowing your whistle, you're actually, if you've communicated your purpose, I think that would be a really powerful sort of environment that you would create as a coach in that space.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I was sort of hearing there was like that shared communication, which could be done sort of pre-game as well. So it might just be a quick chat between, both coaches from each team and the referee. Saying we've been focusing really hard about having high levels of ball in play at the moment. So us as a collective, and maybe including spectators, if the ball is out of play, then we need to get that ball back in play as quick as we can.
Yeah. Once the spectators running around being
I would like to see people charged about it.
Ball kids, ball people. Yeah,
get urgent. Hurry up is quite a good word. If I ever have a chance to do refereeing, come on, let's get a move on. Yeah. Whether that's a kick being taken, or we're ushering players to get back and restart the game, because the development happens when the game's been played, right? So let's get on board with the referee. And you also mentioned scoring systems as well. I think if there's various aspects that coaches and players might be looking to score the games, maybe alternatively, not just based on tries. It might be, passes, for example, if we're able to count that, or it might be a scoring system that involves maybe 3 for the first try that you score, 2 for the next, and 1 for the last. So it would be trying to be inclusive within a game to try and encourage more players to score ultimately. Having the referee on board with that can be huge in facilitating that as well. Yep. So you were talking about praising an extra pass. Oh, did you see that, James? There was a wee extra pass you could have maybe made there. Could you get the ball away next time? That would be class if I could see that. You're then maybe helping a wee bit of coaching as well. So it's all interlinked.
I'm sure I've heard on Premiership down south in the Premiership, a referee actually go, that was one of the best tries I've seen. Like at the end of the day, referees are fans as well, and it's interesting what you were just saying there, that we're really fortunate in Scotland that hundreds of coaches referee their club games, especially like 15, 14s, 13s down the way. And we actually talk about the game at that level. It's just a big training session. It's the big game. But sometimes there's this switch, isn't there, where we need to maybe think about officiating or maybe over officiating, but actually doing all those things that you mentioned, is enjoying it, positivity, praise, maybe looking at the decisions to go, well, actually, does that decision need to be made in that situation? I can see what the player's trying to do. It's a learning experience when they praise and encourage, and just translating that mindset that we'll probably have in training as a coach, referee, or game coaching, whatever the role is you want to be. Translating that into a Saturday or Sunday where we're doing the same, just there happens to be 15 players from another team doing that. And I think if we can kind of translate that mindset.
Yeah. If I can think back to when I was teaching, a PE teacher, you know, if I was in the middle of a game, and I had my school on one side and a visiting school on the other side, you know, I would take myself out of my school, and I would become the coach of both teams.
Yeah, that's great.
And I would just forget about my allegiances. Yeah. If my school won, great. If this school won, fine. But I would encourage this team as much as I would encourage this team, and I would, you know, offer this team, improvements or suggestions or, you know, whatever. It's just you're there as the adult in that environment, and you can provide so much to those young people on both sides of the ball. And I think if we just drop our badges every so often and just think, right, okay, who are we here for? It's not for ourselves. It's for these young people to have a positive playing environment to thrive in.
I don't think there's a better message to finish a Blether one than that.
I know
that is my drop.
Is that deep?
Super passionate. No, that
is
awesome.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on, Craig. I think let's just summarise that. Refereeing, really important for coaches to look at that world. So get yourself onto, we call it NITMO, the Introduction to Match Officiating.
It's not easy. Refereeing.
It's not easy. They're learners as well. They're like performers, players, affording opportunities for growth. Get on the courses, because like I say, if you can learn about running lines, decision making, a breakdown, enable you to see the game better, it might actually really show you that it's really worthwhile. We need more referees. I think we can't really. I was about to say sum up the match strategy in like a few sentences. I think just get more and better referees, isn't it?
Yeah, there might be a wee blind spot in your coaching as well. That
I had massive blind spots in my coaching until I went on that referee course.
That from a different perspective, i.e. referee, that maybe flicks a wee light bulb on in your head that Definitely. You're like, I haven't thought about that. Jeez, wish I'd known that a while ago, and then maybe adjust your coaching on a technique or tactic. And
they're not two separate worlds, are they? No. As you said, you'd be in a coaching role. Refereeing is coaching at times. In coaching, you need to referee at times. The skills complement each other. So I think if there's a call to action, it's give it a go. Get yourself on a course. Go on Scums and have a look. And if in doubt, contact Craig.
Perfect. Look forward to it.
Brilliant. Cheers, Craig.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.